Thank you, Raja. You're here?
Yeah, I'm outside, but you go ahead. I just noticed you're not recording, so please go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to introduce the Janta Reddy Garu. So Janta Reddy Garu have the background of LLM degree from the Indiana University School of Law, Indianapolis. And she graduated with LLB degree from the Osmania University Law School in India and is admitted to the bar in India. Ms. Janta Reddy is admitted to the practice law in the state of New York. She is a member of American Immigration Lawyers Association, a New York State Bar Association. So Ms. Janata Reddy is interested in immigration law, stemmed from her own experience in an immigration from India. She realizes that important of role global migration plays in international trade and economical development. So welcome, Janata Reddy Garu. So today we are going to discuss with the first travel about the current travel ban, which is going to open the next month, November, and some general questions and answers on H1 and H4. So Janta Reddy Garu, can you please explain what exactly this travel ban and what's going to be impact when they open in November?
Sure, Andy. Before jumping into the topic, let me thank you and the entire organization and all the leadership team and everyone, and especially the participants as well. So thank you, everyone. Murli Garu, coming back to the questions. Yes, we heard at least a week ago that United States is planning to lift the travel ban and planning to allow who are fully vaccinated, the visitors, and everybody wants to travel back. But we don't have an official statement on that one yet from the White House. Of course, anyway, the DHS secretary also said the same. So we are looking forward for that official statement. But considering the background and the press release and all that going on in the media, so they are planning to open up, lift this travel ban starting from November 8th for fully vaccinated people. And it's almost, it will be 21 months since the travel ban is in place. Can't really believe that, it's been this long. I think we can start taking the questions, Sandy.
Hello.
Hello, Andy.
Hello, Ma. I think I texted the question also. Let me read it. This is a question for like a few H1, H4. Let me come back. I'm sorry. Can you see me? I don't know.
Yes, I can. I can.
Yeah. This is a question for H4 families, like H1 families who stayed here after their visa expired for some reasons, like to complete the kids' education or whatever good reason, and left 10 years ago, for example, 2012 May, if they left the country, and on the parents' passport only, they had a ban like 10 years, but still their H4 dependents also, I think the same ban applies. So that H4 person, after 10 years, like if they want to come back, how does it work? Do you have any idea? If not, that's fine. No, you can tell me later too.
No. Usually how it works is, any time, at any point of time when a person is staying in the United States, if they are kind of, exceeding their legal status and then, trying to stay inside the country without any proper documentation, unlawful status, it depends upon, like up to 6 months, there will be, a 3-year and then, more than that, and a 10-year ban. If they left in 2012, unless and until they go ahead and appear for the stamping, they would not really know. What I would recommend is, yes, they definitely needs to go ahead and then, make that kind of appointment on what visa they want to come in. And at the same time, don't lie on the DS-160, just go ahead and explain the situation, properly. So you might be able to, apply for the waivers and then try to overcome the situation.
Oh, first instead of going to visa directly, they have to apply for the waiver, right?
I mean,
What you
it
are saying?
depends. It depends. So what I would say is, in
Even if
right
visitor
now,
visa, sorry to interrupt. Even if it's,
any visa, yeah, any
okay.
kind of visa, they can just make an appointment to go ahead and all. Then based on the input from the DS 160, the officer would be able to see all of it. I mean, how long they overstayed and all. So based on that, they would be recommending, whether the waiver is applicable for them or not. Then
Okay,
if it is
DS
applicable,
160.
then they can get the waivers approved. Then again, go back and appear again in front of the officer for the visa. So,
Okay.
that would be the procedure.
Okay. So DS 160 or whatever you said is also, for example, in India, the same US Embassy?
Yes, that is every person who goes for a visa, so he or she, is required to fill out the DS 160.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Amma. I think I got the answer.
You're welcome.
And also, how does it work? Just one question. For example, like I said, 2012 May, 10-year ban applies like 2021. So is it 10 years completed or 10th year
No, it
running?
depends upon. I wouldn't really, just assume that, it is a complete 10-year ban. It all depends upon, how long they overstayed their visa. So it all depends upon that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they have to find out. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sir, you're on mute, Tana.
So anybody have any questions? Just raise your hand so we can go one by one. So we have plenty of time. So I would like to say thank you, Vidya Garpati for joining, Foundation Trustee. So there is one question actually, Janta Garu here. This is Gopal. I am on H1B with the priority date 7/1/2014. Me and my wife got EAD in July 2021. My son is 14-year-old and he is on H4. I don't know that I can apply EAD for him also, although he is minor. Now I'm thinking to apply EAD I-765 for him. How much fee do I need to pay when I submitting my application? When my company filed I-485 for him, they paid $750. His biometric also completed. So when I checked online, it is saying fee is $0. Is that correct? And is my assumption of filing the I-765 for him is correct?
Yeah, usually, whoever is under 14, the $750 fee is applicable. But of course, when you really want to go ahead and then, do the, EAD on that front, I would always recommend doing it along with the petition. That's what we did. But yes, of course, you can go ahead and then, send it out after any time that, you submitted certain petitions, after 2007. So it is covered. But of course, now you said that he is over 14 years old, maybe the biometrics might be required. So there might be a little bit of fee involved in that one.
His biometrics completed in April 2021 this year.
Okay. If that is
6 months back.
Okay, if that is the case, then just go ahead and then send out the 765 along with the 485 receipt notice.
Okay, so and I don't need to pay any other fee, right? That's where I'm getting confused. Like, do I need to pay any fee for that 765 or not?
Not really at this point of time, I would say. Just go ahead and then, send out along with the 485 receipt notice and then, whatever the biometrics already completed. So I would also include that one as well.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next to Sai Srinivas, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am. So I am actually on H1B. So I am not married yet. So my fiance, she applied for a PhD and she got her F1 visa because she actually is a chemical engineer. So they have put under extra immigration scrutiny and all, and it took 2.5 months to get the security clearance because of this PhD and the chemical engineering thing. So my question is, now we are planning to get married. She has her F1 when she was in single status. Okay, now from her after her F1 visa and before she comes in January, in December, we are planning to get married, and she'll be coming in January. So is there any place, if we are getting married, that we have to let anybody know or anything? That's the first question. Okay, so and basically what we are worried is if in the immigration, if they ask about the status and all, like if generally F1, what they believe is the students should not get settled or anything. That's what the motto of F1 when they ask for thing is, because we say that we'll study and come back to our country or something like that. Now that she's married to a H1B person, they'll have an assumption that she's going to get settled, and we are worried that they might send her back or deny her entry because of this extra security and all that. So is it okay to let them know that we are married or anything, or other thing what we are thinking is we'll just get married, that is traditional thing, but we don't get legally married, like no paperwork or nothing, so we can just say that she's legally single, so she is single. So like what would the best thing to do at this point in time?
Okay, the very first point I would try to bring it to your attention is, no matter whether you are legally on the paper married or in a traditional way, you are married. That's the first thing. And then, of course, as once the marriage happens, she will be definitely eligible for the H4. Of course, if she really don't want to go on the H4, as her status is F1, if she is having a visa on those lines, yes, definitely, she can come back in on the, F1 as well. But at the port of entry, for some reason, if they ask, are you married, and in all of these things, she should really, let them know at that point of time. But otherwise, yes, if she really don't want to go ahead and take up the H4, she's always eligible to travel back. That assumption is only when you go for the visa. Yes, of course, you should not abandon your home country, but that doesn't say anything that, once you get married to a H1B, of course, if you want to still continue on the F1, you should be able to do that.
Okay, so you suggest that if the immigration is, for instance, asking about the marital status, she should be answering married irrespective of legally getting married or not.
That is correct, because once you are traditionally married as well, no matter what it is, as per Indian rules and all, I would say you guys are married. She should say yes, and then she can give an answer reasoning that she would like to go ahead and then still continue her stay inside the country on the F1, and then
okay,
that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. So in that case, do you suggest that we should get the marriage certificate also, or it doesn't matter if we don't get as well?
It depends, but it would be helpful for you to get a marriage certificate when you are there, instead of just running back and forth at later point of time.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Srinivas. Next, Reddy.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Tana, and thank you, Junita garu. Can we speak in Telugu? Is it okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Junita garu, thanks Andy for your time. నాకు 2 questions ఉన్నాయండి. ఒకటి, బేసికలీ వీఆర్ ఫ్యామిలీ ఆఫ్ 4 అండి. నాది H1B EB3 కింద అక్టోబర్ లో కరెంట్ అవుతే అప్లై చేస్తే
మీ వాయిస్ అంత సరిగా లేదండి.
ఇప్పుడు ఎట్లా ఉందండి?
yes better.
ఓకే, బేసిక్ గా వీఆర్ ఫ్యామిలీ ఆఫ్ 4 అండి. మాది EB3 H1 EB3 కింద ప్రాసెస్ అయింది అక్టోబర్ లో కరెంట్ అయినప్పుడు. బేసిక్ ప్రిన్సిపల్ గ్రీన్ కార్డ్ వచ్చిందండి. డెరివేటివ్ వచ్చి అక్టోబర్ లో అప్లై చేస్తే రిటర్న్ రావడం వల్ల ఫైనల్ గా ఏప్రిల్ లో ప్రాసెస్ అయిందండి. జూలైలో బయోమెట్రిక్ అయిపోయింది. ఇప్పుడు సిచ్యువేషన్ ఫ్రమ్ నవంబర్ ఆన్వర్డ్స్ అది రెట్రోగ్రేట్ అవుతుందండి. ఇప్పుడు కరెంట్లీ 24 జూలై 14 ఉందండి. మాది మే 13 కరెంట్ డేటు 140ది. ప్రిన్సిపల్ కి అయితే వచ్చింది గ్రీన్ కార్డు, స్పౌస్ ది ప్రాసెస్ లో ఉంది. ఇప్పుడు నవంబర్ లో రెట్రోగ్రేట్ అవుతుంది కాబట్టి విల్ ద స్పౌస్ డెరివేటివ్ తన క్యూలో ఉండి అది కరెంట్ అయిన తర్వాతనే వస్తుందా, ఆర్ స్పౌస్ ఆల్రెడీ ప్రిన్సిపల్ అప్లికెంట్ అయిపోయింది కాబట్టి స్పౌస్ ఇస్ కన్సిడర్డ్ యాజ్ ఆల్రెడీ కరెంట్ అండ్ రెగ్యులర్ ప్రాసెసింగ్ టైమ్ లో అప్రూవ్ అవుతుందా?
I don't think so. Hers will be considered as current. What I would recommend is try to take it up to the local senator or the Congress person. Involve them, stating that you already got your green card, and then she's left behind, and then also mention to them that the dates got retrogressed, and then you would like to expedite her green card. That's what my recommendation would be.
And should we have to do it before 1st of November, because we have 10 more days left through Congressman office, or we can even do it after 1st of November when the retrograde happens?
I would recommend as soon as possible.
So we have to approach the Congressman office asking them to put in the request for expedite, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And second question, madam, we have 2 children and they are about 21 years, but aged out and unmarried. And we have filed them for 130. I-130 filed చేసాము based on the principal green card అండి. ఇప్పుడు ఈ ప్రాసెస్ లో పిల్లలు చదువుకోవడానికి if they have to continue, ఎందుకంటే కరెంట్ ప్రాసెసింగ్ టైం ఫర్ I-130 is about 5 years అండి. సో ఈ 5 years మేము ఇక్కడ వాళ్ళని ఉంచుకోవాలి అంటే కరెంట్లీ దే ఆర్ ఆన్ B1 B2, దే ఆర్ ఇన్ ద కంట్రీ అండ్ కంట్రీలో ఉన్నప్పుడు ఫైల్ చేసాము. సో మేము వాళ్ళు ఇక్కడ ఉంచుకోవాలా కంటిన్యూ అవ్వాలంటే మాకు ఏం ఆపర్చునిటీస్ ఉంటాయండి? షుడ్ బి ఫైల్ 485, దాని తర్వాత అడ్వాన్స్ పే రోల్ అండ్ ఈఏడి రిక్వెస్ట్ చేయాలా, లేక ఎందుకంటే 130 మీద మీకు ఈఏడి అండ్ అడ్వాన్స్ పే రోల్ ఇవ్వరు కాబట్టి, సో డూ యూ హ్యావ్ టు గో ఫర్ ఇమీడియట్లీ వన్స్ వి గెట్ ద receipt of 130 to go for filing 485 and ask for along with 131 and 765 అండి?
I mean, as they come under a different category, I mean, unmarried and about 21.
F2B and
yeah, I mean, I don't think the date is current, at least I think
it's 5 years processing time.
5 years processing timing. So having an I-130 filed will not give them any kind of eligibility to file the 765 or the I-131. So
I'm talking about 485, madam. Can we file 485 concurrently?
Unless until the dates are current, you cannot file the 485. So that's what I'm trying to say. In order for you to keep them inside the country, F1 would be the best case scenario. So go ahead and change their status immediately to F1. So they are, start continuing
their studies. They are not studying currently, Andy. They are not studying currently. My daughter already completed medicine in India, and she's come here to prepare for her USMLE. And my babu is special child, and he is not studying. He has to live with us, being a special child.
Okay. Yeah, I think, if that is the scenario, I think, you should keep extending whatever their status is. But of course, 485 eligibility, would come only after the dates become current.
But they will not allow us to extend for, like, say, every time is 6 months.
That's
so
true.
We have 5 years to go. We can't extend for 10 times, correct?
That's true. Unfortunately, we really don't have any other alternative available for these kind of scenarios.
Any special conditions that we can apply for a special child, because he is not studying, he cannot leave himself alone, and we are green card holders, and we are 130 is filed. Yeah.
I think you can try for your son, maybe putting a special request through the senator's office. But I guess you have to keep extending whatever his current status is. But I'm sure that on the other side, the 485 side, he should you will be able to do that only once the dates are current. But on the B2 side, yes, as parents, both the parents are here inside the country, and then you are a green card holder, you can give that explanation that the attention is needed for him all the time.
And they have to live with us. Of course, they are over 21 years because they have aged out in the last 14 years while we are staying here in USMA.
Yeah, you can try for your son, getting the extension continuously. But I think, that would be a little bit riskier one. Each time you have to explain them the situation and the scenarios and then go through it.
Okay, madam. Coming back to the first question, madam, the derivative though is filed, we had 3 months of time when it was current. Now it is retrograded. Still, she is not considered to be as a part of the main applicant, so it goes together, but still it is retrograded. So you have to wait till it becomes current again. It is not possible that we can be without the senators and the congressmen's involvement. It cannot be treated as a current situation, because then it is like me, green card holder, and wife is a derivative. So currently, the spouse is under, say, spouse of a green card holder is current. But will they treat now as that, or will they treat as we have filed it together at that time? So she cannot be a spouse of a green card holder now.
So these two things are too different. So, as she, is a derivative beneficiary, and then of course she is eligible under that category. But of course, right now you have your green card. So what I would say is try to expedite it. And also, as the spouse of the green card holder, that particular category is current right now. So you can also go ahead and then, file the I-130 and 485 concurrently, where she can, stay back inside the country when the process is going on. So you can also
she
do
already
that
have
one.
She already have a 485 and her EAD and 131 and 765 is already
I
approved.
got that one, but that cannot be, that is going on right now. But as per your statement, that's kind of going to retrogress starting from November 1st, you are stating, right?
Yeah.
If that is the case, then the case will not move forward. So, the very first thing is follow up with the senator's office and then, try to expedite it on that line. And then if that doesn't work out, then try to come back and then do it as a family-based one, the I-130 and 485. So if you don't
New
want to file
application.
another 485, so, you can just try to, interfile and port it. But I would say just go ahead and file both at the same time, I-130 and 485.
The reason for this confusion is, madam, because we were talking to the USCIS office, we had a call, and she took about 15 minutes to check with their superiors and with their seniors to confirm that the derivative is considered as current because it was filed and it was there for 3 months as current. Though it is retrograding, she will be treated as if filed and together, and that will be processed in the processing time, but not waiting for the current to become again.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah, I know. I had cases where, 7-8 years ago, similar situations, where husband got and then, wife kind of, really didn't get it. And then, and then he had to file the I-130, whatever I was suggesting, they took that route. But what I would say is first follow up with your senator and then do the rest of the steps.
Thank you, Reddy. Next one, actually, there is one more question on the chart. Can we start the PERM process before joining the new employer? I mean, even before H-1B transfer, employer has active PW for the exact profile.
I cannot comment on the prevailing wage determination exact profile, but of course the answer is yes, as long as the employer is having the position availability and as long as the employer is having the ability to pay, yes, that can be done.
Okay, next question. Hearing the things like H-1B interview success ratio is more at Delhi consulate office compared to the other consulate offices. Also, appointment slots are booked for next 3 months. What are your suggestions for consultant planning to travel to India who has to also go for H-1B visa interview? Stamping is expired on August 2021.
I would say, it all depends upon, the jurisdiction where you belong to. You come under which consular location. I don't think so. One consular is good and one other consular office is, favoring some, but it all remains the same because they do have same kind of instructions. Sometimes, it all depends upon the outcome, but, no matter what it is, all the consular process would be, on the similar lines. So I don't have any specific recommendations, but if you are getting those kind of positive news from your friends, of course you can, take it forward. And if you are eligible, yes, go ahead. But yeah, it would be similar for everybody.
Okay.
So, yeah, I have a follow-up question on that.
Yes, Purli.
Yeah. So how do we know, like, in which jurisdiction we will be coming into, right? Is there any specific reason that we have to go to only one consulate for visa interview, or we can go to any consulate?
Okay, let me put it this way. Like, let's say if a person is from, from South side, like, from Hyderabad, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So the jurisdiction that comes under, that you had to go is Hyderabad. But let's say if that person, going for the first time, but somehow working in Delhi, so he's also eligible to go to Delhi. So that's how it is. So from the place where you are, so that's how the jurisdiction plays a role.
Yeah, okay. For a person who is working in US currently and when he go back to India and he belongs to South, then he has to go to South consulate office.
That's what I would say. If he's from Hyderabad, yes, for Hyderabad. Or if he's from Chennai, yes, you can go to Madras. Or from Bangalore, yes, they can go to, Chennai.
Chennai. Okay. And one other question, right? The NIE was there, right? In between, people were applying for NIE, right? And whoever is going to India, they were applying for NIE and going to India and coming back with NIE, right? So the NIE is still required.
For now, as we are talking, yes. But if the ban is lifted on November 8th, you don't have to really, carry those extra documentation related to the NIE because the travel ban will be lifted. But as we speak right now, it's still there in place unless and until we hear officially from the White House that kind of statement. But as the information is from November 8th, for the fully vaccinated people, they are trying to lift it up.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Murli.
Answers.
Next, Akhil, you want to ask the question?
Perfect. Thank you so much for organizing, and thank you, Janita ma'am, for answering our questions. My question was about travel related. So I'm currently on my STEM OPT. I have 8 months left on the OPT, and my F1 visa has expired this last May. So I wanted to ask what would be the procedure for me to travel outside the US and come back? Obviously, you mentioned the travel ban, but given that my F1 visa has expired.
Yeah, for you especially, I think you won't come under the travel ban because for the students who are coming in study, so definitely, you are exempted on that one. But of course, you already finished your studies and then, you have I'm assuming that you already have a job in place and then, continuing it. So make sure that you are, having that employment confirmation letters, pay stubs and all of those things. So go appear for F visa, though you still have another, 8 or 9 months left on your, STEM OPT. Then while coming back, you'll be asked that, what is the reason that you are coming back? Then, you can show your employment letter, confirmation letter and the pay stubs that you are required here as a resource and then, finish up that job.
That's really helpful. So I don't need to get the F1 stamped again once I'm abroad.
You have to. That's what I'm trying to say. If the visa is expired, yes, you have to go for the stamping. But
Okay.
Of course, having your job and then, as you are currently working helps you in getting through it.
Got it. That's helpful. Sorry. And I think a second follow-up I had is I got through the second wave of the H1B lottery this year. So I got past that. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping to hear back if I'm approved or not. So if I am approved, and I have to travel outside to get my stamping done, my citizenship is India, but my family and parents live in South Korea. So would I be able to travel to South Korea to get the H1B, stamping done there, or is it mandatory for me to go back to India?
I think as long as you can show that, your parents reside in South Korea, and then I would definitely recommend if the law office or, your employer already, if they haven't filed, so try to request that consular process, if they had to. So that way you'll have enough proof to show them that, yes, you can appear there.
Gotcha. So before I even leave the US, I have to, engage in this process to get confirmation that the consulate in Korea is able to handle this process?
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. That answers all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Akhil. Next to Prashant.
Hello, ma'am. This is Prashant. I have one question. I'm currently on H1B and currently in US. And my family currently in India. So they have a consular appointment on 26th of October. And after the visa stamping is done, I'm planning their travel by around 22nd of November. So considering the travel ban restriction get lifted by 8 November, do I need to apply for the NIE for them during their consular visit?
Not really. If the travel ban is lifted, you don't have to apply for the NIE. But more specific details need to be followed, what they are planning to do. So as per the generalized understanding is that, yes, once they lift it up, the whole proclamation, the ban, then, the NIE is no longer going to be in place.
Okay. And do I need to provide their fully vaccinated card during the consular visit?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And also you have to comply with the rest of the, the restrictions that are already in place, like, getting the COVID tests done, all those things.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Thank you, Prashant. I have one question from the chat. I got an EAD currently on H1B. I want to open my own practice. Can I do that on my EAD and do I-485 myself? Will it conflict that I am an employee and employer?
I definitely would not recommend doing in that manner, because that is very you would really love to do that, but you'll eventually have some kind of trouble when the case is scheduled for the interview. The very first reason would be you being the employer and having the complete control of the corporation. The main reason would be hey, the position that you are saying that you are working for is really in existence. So make sure that the entire thing is not really falling out. So make sure that I really don't recommend using that method at all. I mean, there are risks involved in this.
Okay, thank you, Janita. Next, Chinna Reddy.
Yeah, I think I have posted my question, but yeah, let me read that question one more time here. So thank you. So basically, I moved from my old company to an American-based company over here in October 2019. And then, my visa got expired in the month of November 2020. Earlier this year, in the month of June, due to personal emergency, we planned to travel to India. And then when I was trying to book the appointment on the travel docs, it popped up and said, you're eligible for drawbacks. And then when I spoke to some of my colleagues over here and friends, and they said, because you moved from my old company, a different company to the other company, so you definitely need to go to the visa interview. It cannot be possible that you'll be eligible for Dropbox.
Mm-hmm.
So can you please clarify on that?
Yeah, you still will be eligible for the Dropbox. The reason is it doesn't depend upon corporation specific. It depends upon the classification specific. Let's say, if you had a H-1B visa in the past 4 years, of course you are eligible. But let's say if you are on H-4 and then now going for a H-1B, you will not be eligible for the Dropbox. As long as you have a visa in the same classification, you definitely will be eligible for the Dropbox. So it's not corporation or employer specific.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anta. Yeah, that clarifies my question.
Oh, thank you. Next, Jed TE. I don't know who it is, but
I'm sorry, actually, for some reason my name.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Tana, for arranging this one, and also we are really thankful to Miss Janita. We have been working with Janita for the past 3-4 years, through my employer. I have a couple of questions. We got our EADs approved under EB3 when we downgraded. Now our 485s are pending. So if we use EB3, the EAD benefits, for example, for spouse working, or for example, advanced payroll or anything like that, can we do interfile if the EB2 dates gets current? Some people are saying we cannot use the EB2, to file interfile again if we use EB3. Any benefits of EAD under EB3? Can you please clarify?
I think you still should be able to do the interfiling, but the problem here would be, I'm hearing from a lot of my colleagues as well that though they are sending the interfiling request, there's no response from the USCIS, even months after. The reason is there is no form or fee attached to the interfiling. It's just a letter that is, going out of attorney's office that, asking them to do it. So I guess, USCIS is not really, considering that, or maybe lack of staff, they are not moving quickly on those kind of requests. So in your situation, what I would recommend is, file another set of 485s if you are eligible under, EB2. So that way, that kind of, gives you a speed pass to that. Of course, you'll be spending, an additional amount on that one. That's worth doing it, in my experience, that's what it would be.
Yeah, thank you. One more question. So when will be the visa number is assigned? Is it during the time of interview, I mean, my 485 is already pending. Do you think the visa number is already assigned? Because from next month, the dates are going to retrogress. My prior date will be under retrogression. So do you think the visa number is already assigned, or they are going to assign during the time of interview or final review?
I mean, see, I don't think so. They're already assigned because, once the dates go back, they're not going to move forward on your file. So the only way for you would be, if you are eligible under the EB2, just go ahead and do that one. Because, there are steps involved. We are seeing very, mixed outcome on different cases. For some cases, they are doing interviews. For some cases, without even the interviews, they are just approving it. We don't know what the, their priority or, what the requirement is. I think, it's just case by case basis. So, there is no pattern in there that, okay, this is happening in this way, okay, the outcome of this case would be in a similar way. So we cannot really guess with the USCIS. So I would say definitely, recommend you to go through the EB2 if you are really eligible on those lines.
Yeah, sure. So we will be able to use the green card EAD and still be able to interfile, right? I mean, of course, we need to file another 485.
Yes, you should be eligible to do that.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Anjaneyulu.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you, Tana, for providing this opportunity. So I have 4 questions actually. So regarding F1 and F2. So actually, my sister on F1, she came here on this fall on September 1st. Actually here, her husband is trying to apply F2 visa, and the visa officer said he's not eligible for F2 visa, and they cannot approve it. So when they are on when the spouse is on F1 visa, can't they apply F2? Is there any reason for denial? I mean, all the things are satisfied eligibility requirements, like he showed all the bank statements and everything that is required for F2 visa. So yeah, that is my first question.
Okay, trying to change the status from F1 to F2, you mean to say?
No, his wife is here on F1. He's applying F2 from India.
Okay.
So yeah, so they said they could not approve this. They said he's not eligible for it.
There should be some reason attached to that one, because maybe he might have not exhibited or tried to overcome that immigrant intent portion. So it's not that just on the face. It's not really whether a person is eligible or not. So it all depends upon the conversation and the documents. Though you have a perfect documentation, and if you are not able to answer certain questions at the consulate when the officer asks you, so documentation would really be of no use. You have to show that kind of intent, to overcome that, he don't have any intention to abandon his home country.
Okay.
But in general, it's not like, one thing fits all. So, as the spouse is here on the F1, he definitely should be eligible for the F2. But again, it all depends upon whether he'll be able to overcome that immigrant intent.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. I mean, so they didn't ask just 1 or 2 questions. Those are also just a simple questions. But the main question here is I have one doubt. He submitted his DS-160 just before 1 day, 2 days before his thumbprint, VFS appointment is just and visa appointment. They both are on one after another one. He just submitted DS-160 before that. Will that be a problem, or
I don't think
is
so. As long as he's called for the interview on, whatever it's based upon. But my guess is that, I mean, he maybe the officer was not satisfied with his, response to certain questions. Or maybe, I mean, usually for most of these kind of cases, it's kind of, they will not be able to overcome the immigrant intent.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Yeah. And is there any travel ban on F2 dependents if they got like a visa, or is there any travel ban on them this time?
As well, I think F doesn't really have, but if they are planning to travel after November 8th, so I mean, hopefully the travel ban gets lifted as they stated.
Okay, got it. Yeah, while on F2 visa, F2 dependent visa in USA, can they change their status to H1B or F1? I mean, if they are eligible. I mean, if they want to
Yes.
study, can they apply for F1? Or
Yes,
if they got
they
approved
can.
from some employer, can they start working on H1B?
Yeah, once, if they want to go for the H1B, yes, once it is approved and then the validity date triggers in. And then, yes, if they really want to go for F1, yes, as long as they show all the underlying eligibility requirements, yes, they should be able to.
Okay. And one more final question. So the person who is here on F1, so she already completed a B pharmacy in India. Is she eligible for H1B, for applying H1B? I mean, my friends told that B pharmacy is not a degree that is eligible for H1B. I'm not sure like how far that is correct. I would like to clarify with you.
It depends upon the position, depends upon the position. I don't think so as, flat out we can just overrule it that it's not eligible. It all depends upon how, what the position is, what the requirements are. And then if she's meeting those position requirements, she should be eligible for that.
Okay, there are no conditions for on B pharmacy especially then. Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And maybe if she's trying to apply for a software job based on the B pharmacy, yes, of course, I mean, that's not a good idea. But, if she's trying to do H1B on, the related field, as long as she meets the requirement, she should be able to.
Okay, got it. And one more question, just to continue, somebody asked at the beginning of this meeting, there belongs to Hyderabad, but due to the lack of appointments at Hyderabad location, they applied for Chennai location for visa interview. It's allowed, right? I mean,
it depends, sometimes they do allow, sometimes they again route them back to, the jurisdiction.
I see. Yeah. Thank you so much. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you, Anjanelu. Next is Suman.
Hi, Tana team. Thanks for taking this time to clarify these questions. Hi, Janita.
Hi, Suman.
This is Suman. I'm currently working on a L1B blanket visa, and my H1B application got picked in the second lottery of this year. Okay. The documents are submitted and waiting for my result. Okay. So during this, I have applied the application with the change of status mode with a new employer. Okay. Once the H1B is approved, is it legally to work with the current employer to serve the notice period? If so, will it be any issues in the future during PERM or GC process or any future visa stampings at consulate?
Yeah, if you applied for a change of status within the country, as soon as it is approved, there is a validity date attached to that approval. So your status automatically changed on the day the petition got approved from L1B to H1B. So then again you have to start working with that employer because the change already happened. If you still continue with your L employer, so yes, you definitely might have some problems when you go for stamping or down the road when you file for adjustment of status petitions.
Okay. So as soon as we get the result, we need to change the employer.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you. This is what my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suman. Next, I have a question. I'm going through the some of the chart messages, Janita. So I am on H1B and currently in US. My wife and son are in India and have stamping appointment on 26th October at Mumbai. I'm planning for their travel on 22nd November. Do I need to apply for NIE for that during their consular appointment?
I mean, if they are planning to travel after November 8th, then I don't think so. But if they are going now, if they are eligible for the NIE, I would definitely recommend to go ahead and then do that with the NIE, because I mean, though we know, that from November 8th they are going to, but we don't have an official statement yet. So as they are appearing at the consulate before that one, so as long as they are eligible for that, yes, why not?
Thank you. So another one, is Mexico land border open now for H-1B business trip?
It depends. So, I mean, again, if you have an NIE, yes, you can go out and come back in if you are fully vaccinated. But again, same kind of restrictions do apply. And if you have an NIE, have a stamping and all, yes, you can go out and come back in. But again, similar to if you are going to any other country, the same restrictions do apply for that one as well.
Okay, thank you. The next one, my wife has H4 EAD. She has cosmetologist license. Can she start cosmetology business from home or need any approval?
I think she can, but again, when you said especially from home, so make sure that, you have a certain kind of license from county office to conduct that kind of business from home, because not all residential locations are qualified for that one. Sometimes, they do have some restrictive covenants on the residential, areas. So make sure, reach out to the county and then, apply for a license to conduct business from that location. And then, yes, you should be able to do that as long as you have a valid work permit.
Great. Is it mandatory to have a receipt number from USCIS for the H4 visa extension before existing H4 visa expires? Do we see any issues if the receipt number for this H4 visa extension comes after visa expiry? Is there any grace period just in case? How long does it take to receive the receipt number for H4 extension from the time it is filed?
I mean, if there is a gap, like, the expiration of the current status and then the filing of the new case, yes, you will definitely run into some problems. Usually it's not going to be a straight denial. So most likely, they would issue an RFE. But, let's say if the current H4 is expiring on November 1st, and then the petition was received by the USCIS, if you have a FedEx tracking to it, if it is received on 28th of October itself, but there is a delay in issuing the receipt notice, you are covered under that one. But the actual case is filed late, and then, there is a gap in between, then definitely, you should expect an RFE on those lines and try to address why you are not able to file the case on time.
Great. Can a person on H-1B status open a LLP or C-Corp? What are the problems, issues involved?
I would say they should be eligible, but again, you have to go by the local corporate rules. And then as you are a full-time H-1B employee working somewhere for some other employer, so you cannot work on this corporation. You will be only able to, volunteer and then, declare the profits on those lines on your taxes.
Okay. Going back on H4 EAD from H1B, how far in advance should my spouse apply for H1 plus H4 plus H4 EAD? H4 EAD are taking almost around 8 months in the present situation.
Yeah, definitely it's taking a lot of time these days for EADs and even for the H4s as well. So I would say you are eligible to go ahead and apply, 180 days before, 6 months before. So try to take advantage of that one and then, apply in a timely manner.
Okay, great. After EB3 downgraded, if something goes wrong with the H1B extension, does it affect EAD from EB3 downgrade?
I don't think so, because these two are two different things. But yes, at the same time, you really need to maintain the given status as well. So I really quite didn't understand the question. So, I mean, those two things are different, H1B and the adjustment of status. So.
Okay. I have a green card, but was out of country for 2 years immediately after getting the GC. Using Form I-131, now I am now back in the US for a couple of months, but need to live again. My Form I-131 has expired. I need to live for a couple of months. Do I need to apply for I-131 again, or can I just on GC without risking re-entry?
See, I mean, looks like he or she applied a re-entry permit and stayed away, and then again now back. As long as you have the intention to come back within couple months, you really don't need a re-entry permit, because you can be out at least, up till 6 months. But if you are planning to stay away more than 6 months, definitely it's worth to, apply the re-entry, do the biometrics, and then leave.
Okay. Sir, I have a question which is bit personal. Is it possible to have ma'am's contact? Oh yeah, sure. So you may, so Genitas, and they're asking your email address. Can you just give your email address?
Yeah, I can definitely do that one in here. So.
Next, going back to the Sai Srinivas, do you have a still question, Sai?
Yeah. Sorry. So
okay.
I forgot to ask that thing, Janta ma'am. So as I was asking, after we get married, officially, is there any forum or consulate or anywhere else? Do we have to inform any people after we get married in an F1 status legally?
Not really. I mean, see, if you both are trying to keep both of your statuses, separate, no need to.
Yes. We officially want to do that. She will be in her F1 going for OPT and everything. I'll be in my H1. So we don't want to mix our statuses. So there is no forum or anywhere else which we'll have to officially report or do anything of that sort, right?
Not really. There is one thing I would say: if she is going ahead and applying for the visa again now by filling the form DS-160, then she should mention it there.
Yes, but no, she has a stamped visa already.
No, then she don't have to, unless and until asked at the CBP office.
Yeah. So it's for 4 years, so there is no forum or nothing. So we can, only if the immigration person is asking, we let them know. Otherwise, there's nothing. There's no additional problem that's going to add upon because of the marriage, right? So that's the main concern.
No, as long as you both are eligible under your separate categories, I don't think so there's any problem on those
because of this, it's just because of the technical alert list, that is her studies and the extra security they did, we are really worried, because what we wanted to do was to get her once into the to the country, and we go back after 6 months and get married. So that's the main concern. If there is nothing and all, we wanted to do it, otherwise we want to postpone. So
I don't think so. You still can keep both of your statuses separate.
Thanks.
If it is legally required, at the port of entry, or after you come into, like let's say on your pay stubs, as you are on the H1B, once you come into the country, then yes, you have to inform your employer that you are married, and then it reflects on the pay stubs, and then definitely your employer, and then if she's employed on those lines, yes, but not really at the port of entry or on those lines.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Next, Lakshmi Devineni Lakmadra. Lakshmi Devineni Akka have, I think, a question. Please go ahead, Akka.
Thank you, Murli and team, for organizing this. Namaste, Janita Garu. Thank you for coming for the call. Very good. Thank you, Andy. It's a general question regarding for the upcoming visa bulletin, Andy. So we all know that in last year, October, the dates become current for so many people, and people tried doing the downgrades and cases are being approved for 140s and a lot of things pending also. So my question is, now the visa bulletin is going to retrograde a lot of dates. The major question is like, can they, if their EB2 is current according to November bulletin, if they have already applied 485 by downgrading the EB2 to EB3, applied the 485s, can they file their 485s for EB2 again once it is current in from November bulletin?
I would say yes, as long as the downgraded I-140 was not amended. If the downgrade is an amendment, you know, he or she will no longer will have that EB2 I-140. But if it is just a reclassification request, I believe yes.
So they have to apply for a new 485, and when they're applying, they should say that they filed a 485 and again they're applying a 485.
There are two things, you know, I mean, they can do interfiling as well or just do a new set of 485s. We are not really recommending to file the interfilings for the clients because the response that we are getting from the USCIS is not, you know, in a similar way what the clients want. So if you already filed a downgrade I-140 and 485, you got your EADs, and then now you are eligible under the EB2 as well. You can do an interfiling. The way it works is you just have to write a letter trying to let them know this is what it is, you are eligible under this category, and then do an interfiling. To my understanding, these kind of letters are not given that immediate attention what client wants, because you know clients have been waiting for years together just to get into that line, and then you know I'm guessing that you know most of them are willing to spend that $1,225 to get the desired answer or response from the USCIS. Unlike, you know, yes, you can definitely do an interfiling, don't have to spend that kind of money, but you need to have patience to wait 6+ more months, you know, for that interfiling to happen. If you cannot wait, I would say just go ahead and file another set of 485s by, you know, paying the $1,225 fee for each application.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you.
You're welcome, Lakshmi Garu.
So thank you. Next one, question on L1B to H1. Till the time H1B approved, document received to the new employer, can I give the notice to my L1 employer and continue serve the notice period?
I would say yes. I know. I mean, you definitely need to comply if you signed a contract, you know, the notice period and all. But as I just mentioned, you know, as soon as the H1B is approved, technically your status already changed to H1B.
Okay, great. The next, I don't know, W-A-H, wow. Who is this? Wow.
Hello, I am Samir here.
Okay.
I have one specific question. So, for example, if the guy has left the company and joined other company, and by the meantime his date has been current, like his filing date is current, then how long he can wait to apply for a green card once his date is current?
Just to file the 485 eligibility,
Right.
so because he moved. Okay. I mean, I would say as soon as possible, but I guess, you know, I mean, there is no hard and fast rule, but at least, you know, I mean, within the 6 months or 1 year time frame. But to my understanding, you know, I mean, nobody waits
the
that
thing is,
long.
the new company, they have to apply for again I-140. They
Oh,
have
in
to
that case, yeah, in that case, you need to still wait till your I-140 is approved. So, you know,
there is no hard rule that, okay, once your date becomes current, you have to wait for
in your
year,
scenario,
2 years.
in your scenario, as you know, you already moved out, and then, you know, there is no position available at the previous employer, and then your current employer is trying to kickstart the whole process. which is, prevailing wage, labor, and then, the I-140. So, that's how it goes. Maybe they can do at the time of I-140, both as they can port the previous date to this I-140. So they can do I-140 and 485 concurrently. But in your scenario, there is no time limit on that one, but definitely the new employer should kickstart the whole process.
So that means the USCIS doesn't discard that, right?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. And the second question, just the second question. In this, what I'm asking is, I saw some cases in which the new company can apply for green card based on I-140 approved from previous employer. Is possible?
As far as my experience goes, 0%, because they cannot just rely on somebody else's I-140. This employer should definitely have their own I-140, and in order for that particular beneficiary to be eligible.
Yeah, I have.
They cannot ride on somebody else's I-140.
Yeah, I have. Why I'm asking this, because I have seen one case in which he applied like that and he got his green card approved too.
Maybe the company got merged, or there will be something underlying clause how he will be. But in a generalized notion, if both the companies are completely two different corporations, I don't think so. I never saw.
Yeah, even I have not.
You have to check with him what is the underlying thing.
Yeah. The thing is, I am 100% sure his I-140 was approved from different company. He left the company. For the new company, he based on previous employers I-140, he applied and he got his green card. But I heard that, and I went through the net also, saw everywhere, there is a lot of risk involved in that. That's what I heard. That's why I just stopped that idea of applying.
I would say that's not possible at all. I don't know, maybe it's a mistake, but eventually, USCIS does have the authority to undo it at any point of time if they realize that.
Oh, really?
Yes, because recently, I'll just share one experience that we have. We have a consultation with one of the person who is going through the naturalization process. When you go through the naturalization process, you just have to, under oath, let them know. Most of the times, attorneys do advise that at least, stick with the same corporation, through whom you got the green card. At least 6 months would be an ideal situation. This guy, never, worked for that corporation. He got the green card and then, worked somewhere else. And in the interview, the officer was able to cut that one. Now, the whole scenario is, he said, you are not even eligible for the naturalization. On top of that one, the green card you got is through fraud and misrepresentation. So they have the every ability to go ahead and do the whole thing. So make sure you are really complying with the rules. It's not that, down the road, you have kids, everything is settled down. Then, if these kind of things, come up, then, there's no way that you can overcome it.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. One more question, actually. So we have the citizenship. We want to apply the green card for my brother. What is the process? Is it possible?
Yeah, definitely you can apply, under the sibling category, but the wait time is almost, 12 to 14 years. So it depends upon. So I guess, it's better you, talk with any of the attorney's office or, our office, in fact, schedule a consultation for that, because, each scenario is different. But eligibility wise, yes, you definitely can, sponsor your brother if you are a citizen.
Thank you, Janta. So I think we are almost 11:12. Last one question I'm going to ask here. Can H-1B travel on advanced payroll back to US and still be maintained H-1B status? If so, should be with the same employer?
I would recommend, yes, with the same employer, yes, you can use the advanced payroll for the travel purposes, yes.
And the same, I think the second question we have it, H1B having EAD and Travel India goes for the stamping. If visa goes wrong under RFE and visa officer wanted to keep the passport and H1B wanted to come back on the advanced payroll, he must be need his passport. How it works in that case?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need your passport. Advanced parole alone, it's kind of, they can parole you into the country, but without the passport, you cannot even board the flight. So period, that is required.
Okay, nice. Can we upgrade from EB3 to EB1?
Of course, if you have those kind of, eligibility and you met the requirements, yes, and you always can, port the priority dates as well, yes.
Wonderful. I think we are out of time. Pretty much we are 1 hour, 15 minutes. I don't want to take too much time for Janita Garu's time. Is very valuable. Thank you, Janita Garu. We are so glad, had a very good seminar today. I really want to thank you so much. And everybody, if you have any questions, I think Janita Garu already put her email address on the chart. Her email address is janetha@janetha-law.com. Very simple email, janetha@janetha-law.com. If you have anybody and you have any questions, just shoot her email or take the appointment. She's happy to help you. But we are out of time. I don't want to take more time for Janita is very busy. Thank you, Janita Garu. I appreciate your help today.
Thank you, Murli Garu. And then I really appreciate the organization, taking different kinds of topics every week. And then, I could see that you are serving the community in a better way. Really appreciate, the whole organization effort. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So the people are asking the email again. So I'm repeating again, Janetha, JANETHA @JANETHA law, janetha-law.com. I'm going to put here again if you want.
Or you can just Google Janetha, it will bring up my website, that's the best way as well.
Thank you, Janetha. You did a good job. It's different questions from different people. All kinds of questions are answered very well. Thank you so much. And
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Kalarani Garu.
Yeah. Have a good
We
night.
really appreciate
Thank
your
you.
patience, ma'am. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Good night, everybody.
Thanks to Tana.
Thank you.